At sunset, Athens looks eternal. The Parthenon glows above the city like a promise carved in stone. But this city was never simply stable, wise, or victorious. It was noisy, divided, wounded, conquered, rebuilt, and argued over for centuries. And that may be the real secret of Athens. Not perfection, but survival through reinvention. So how did one often broken city become the world's most powerful symbol of civilization itself? Athens did not begin as an obvious capital of history. It rose in a dry landscape of thin soils, hard stone, and uncertain harvests. What it did have was a defensible hill, access to the Saronic Gulf, and a position between sea routes and inland Greece. From the beginning, survival depended less on abundance than on adaptation. That pressure would shape the city's temperament, restless, practical, and always looking outward. Like many early Greek communities, Athens was shaped by local clans, aristocratic power, and recurring tension over land and debt. Later traditions wrapped the city in myths of Athena and heroic kings, but the deeper story is harsher. Athens was forged by internal pressure. When inequality sharpened, the city could have hardened into oligarchy or collapsed into violence. Instead, it began experimenting with something far more dangerous: political participation. Athens did not invent democracy in a finished form, and it certainly did not extend it to everyone. Women, enslaved people, and foreigners were excluded. Yet for male citizens, something radical emerged: the idea that public decisions could be argued openly in the assembly and tested in law courts. In Athens, politics became performance, conflict, persuasion, and responsibility. The city's greatest resource was no longer land. It was participation. When Persian power pushed into the Greek world, Athens faced a brutal choice: cling to land or trust the sea. Themistocles and others saw what geography had been whispering all along. Athens could become a naval city. Silver from Laurion helped fund triremes, and Piraeus became the hinge between the city and the wider world. The decision was strategic, but it changed everything. Athens was no longer just a polis. It was becoming a machine. The Persian invasions nearly erased Athens. The city was evacuated, temples were damaged, and the Acropolis became a scar. Yet this destruction created the turning point. After survival, Athens rebuilt not modestly, but symbolically. The Acropolis rose again in marble, with the Parthenon dominating the skyline. These buildings were religious and civic, but also political theater. Athens was telling allies, rivals, and future generations that it had transformed suffering into legitimacy. Behind the Golden Age stood an uncomfortable truth. Athens led an alliance, but over time, that alliance looked more and more like empire. Tribute flowed in from across the Aegean. The fleet protected trade and projected strength, yet it also enforced obedience. The same city that celebrated citizen freedom could dominate other Greek communities. This is the contradiction at the heart of Athens: liberty at home, pressure abroad, brilliance financed by power. Athens was not only building ships and temples, it was building a way of thinking. Tragedy, philosophy, rhetoric, and history all flourished in the same civic environment that rewarded argument. In theaters beneath the Acropolis and in the Agora's open spaces, Athenians turned public life into reflection. They asked what justice meant, what power corrupts, and whether democracy can destroy itself. The city's influence spread because it was always questioning its own foundations. The Peloponnesian War exposed everything fragile beneath Athenian confidence. A city built on naval reach and civic energy found itself trapped in a grinding struggle with Sparta and its allies. Crowding behind the long walls protected Athens from invasion, but it also concentrated fear, disease, and political fury. The empire that had financed marble and drama now faced a harder reality. Athens could win arguments, but war demanded endurance beyond rhetoric. Then came plague. Ancient accounts describe a city overwhelmed by sickness, grief, and the collapse of ordinary trust. Historians still debate the exact disease, but the effect is clear enough. Athens lost people, confidence, and moral balance. In crisis, democracy grew harsher, more volatile, easier to manipulate. The city that had taught the world to debate now struggled to govern itself under terror. Its greatest strength was becoming a source of instability. Athens eventually lost the war, and with it, much of the empire that had sustained its confidence. Yet even defeat did not erase the city. Macedonian power later overshadowed the old city-state, and Rome would eventually rule the Greek world. But Athens remained a place people came to learn, remember, and borrow prestige. Its armies were finished. Its afterlife had begun. The city was becoming something stranger, and in some ways, more enduring than a victor. Over centuries, Athens kept changing identities. Pagan sanctuaries became churches, then mosques in the Ottoman era, while neighborhoods shifted around the same sacred hill. The Parthenon itself was never just one thing. It was temple, church, mosque, and eventually a monument to a classical past, rediscovered by outsiders and reclaimed by Greeks. Each transformation added layers, but it also narrowed memory. The Athens people imagine today is partly ancient truth and partly later invention. In the 19th century, independent Greece elevated Athens from a modest town into a national capital loaded with symbolism. Neoclassical boulevards, archaeological clearances, and state institutions tried to reconnect the new nation to an idealized ancient world. But modern Athens was not a museum piece. It was a living city absorbing migrants, commerce, and political upheaval. The modern capital was built through selection, preserving some layers, erasing others, and turning the ancient skyline into national identity. Today, Athens is often photographed from above, as if the Acropolis alone explains it. But the real city lives in layers below. Apartment blocks spreading across the basin, refugee histories, economic shocks, student protest, cafe culture, street art, and neighborhoods that still negotiate between memory and necessity. Modern Athens can feel chaotic, improvised, even exhausted. Yet that disorder is part of its continuity. This has always been a city where public life spills into the open. That is why Athens still matters. Not because it froze the perfect model of democracy, beauty, or reason, but because it exposed how fragile those ideals really are. Here, greatness was argued into existence, financed by power, tested by plague and war, then preserved through ruins, memory, and reinvention. Athens endures because it never stopped being unfinished. And perhaps that is why the modern world still sees itself in this city of broken stone and living noise. Athens teaches a difficult lesson. Civilizations are not remembered only for what they build when they are strong, but for what survives when they are wounded. This city lost wars, empires, and certainty, yet kept shaping how others imagine politics, beauty, theater, and public life. Athens is not the memory of perfection. It is the proof that unfinished places can outlast power itself.